You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. Agenda 47 is the name of Donald Trump's policy plans for his 2024 presidential campaign. According to his campaign, it represents a detailed and official blueprint of what Trump aims to achieve if he makes it back into the White House. The campaign has made these plans available on its website through a series of videos where Trump himself goes over each of his proposals. Early in 2023, some of these Agenda 47 videos seemed to be somewhat hastily put together and reactive to the latest headlines, as observed by Philip Bump. Initially geared towards winning over Republican primary voters, the emphasis on Agenda 47 diminished after Trump secured a significant lead by April 2023. By June 2024, Philip Bump noted in the Washington Post that Trump and his campaign had mostly stopped discussing the plan. In line with Agenda 47, Trump's team has shown support for Project 2025, which has reportedly stirred some frustration within his campaign circles. Historically, Trump's campaign strategy preferred to keep policy proposals broad and to a minimum to dodge criticism and stay adaptable. However, some observers have pointed out that Project 2025 might be the clearest glimpse into what Trump's administration could look like if re-elected. Both Agenda 47 and Project 2025 cover similar ground, advocating for expansive presidential powers, including reissuing Schedule F, reducing the Department of Education's reach, executing mass deportations of illegal immigrants, instituting the death penalty for drug dealers, and deploying the U.S. National Guard in high-crime liberal cities deemed disorderly. The plans also talk about building freedom cities on unused federal land, boosting the manufacturing of flying cars, incentivizing baby booms through baby bonuses, and adopting protectionist trade measures, among more than 40 other policies. Trump has mentioned that 17 of these initiatives would need Congress's approval to be realized. Some proposals, like ending birthright citizenship, may face legal challenges or require changes to the U.S. Constitution and have sparked considerable debate. One particular proposal from Agenda 47 has drawn significant attention, imposing the death penalty for drug dealers and human traffickers alongside designating Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. This plan, like many others within Agenda 47, has ignited controversy and discussions on its implications. As of July 2024, there are 46 videos available. The very first video was shared on December 15, 2022, and the most recent one was posted on December 22, 2023. These videos typically come with a written transcript and often include additional resources that shed more light on the discussed topics. A notable example is the Agenda 47, Rescuing America's Auto Industry from Joe Biden's Disastrous Job-Killing Policies. This particular piece offers links to various reports and articles from reputable sources, such as the America First Policy Institute, the Heritage Foundation, and the Harris Poll, as well as news articles from companies like Reuters, the American Oil and Gas Reporter, and Fox Business. Moreover, it connects to related topics featured on the campaign website. Let's discuss a series of proposals aimed at reshaping key aspects of American policy, especially concerning relations with China and achieving energy independence. First off, there's an initiative to impose strict limitations on Chinese ownership within the United States. This includes vital areas such as energy, technology, telecommunication, farmland, natural resources, medical supplies, and other crucial national assets. The concept here is to halt any new acquisitions by the Chinese and mandate the sale of any existing holdings in these sectors. Another significant aspect is the proposal to cease what's been described as Joe Biden's war on American energy. The strategy is to attain energy independence by eliminating every non-essential federal regulation that hinders domestic production. This encompasses withdrawing from the Paris Agreement and expeditiously approving all proposed oil infrastructure projects. Regarding trade, the proposal introduces universal baseline tariffs on most imported goods. These tariffs would increase if other countries partake in currency manipulation or engage in unfair trade practices. It also involves reducing taxes for American workers, families, and businesses, and taking steps to regain economic independence from China. This would include revoking China's preferred nation trade status, progressively stopping imports of critical goods from China, prohibiting American companies from investing there, and disqualifying firms that outsource to China from receiving federal contracts. The goal here is also to diminish the trade deficit, particularly with China. There is a firm stance against rescuing failing banks. Instead, the emphasis would be on enhancing energy production, decreasing regulations, and reversing tax hikes implemented by Biden's administration to tackle inflation. Bringing jobs and prosperity back to the United States is also a key element of these proposals, aiming for an economic boost and reducing dependency on China and other countries. The Trump Reciprocal Trade Act is put forward as a means to achieve this. It would establish a mechanism where if a country imposes a certain tariff on American goods, the United States would reciprocate similarly. This aims to either remove tariffs on American products or generate significant revenue for the United States, particularly benefiting agricultural states and manufacturers. Lastly, there's a proposition to save America's auto industry from what are described as Joe Biden's extreme Green New Deal policies. This involves abolishing Biden's initiatives on emissions, fossil fuels, and electric vehicles, especially those urging Americans towards electric cars and subsidies for electric cars, seen as primarily benefiting the wealthy. The proposal also emphasizes enforcing full compliance from Canada and Mexico with the terms of the USMCA regarding regional auto parts content in North American cars, which was viewed as beneficial to China and other countries. This further includes ending delays in federal drilling permits and leases and restoring the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The message concludes with a commitment. When I am your president, I will deliver higher wages for auto workers. I will protect your jobs. I will end Joe Biden's catastrophic electric vehicle mandate. The nation has reported concerns from many higher education experts who are warning that recent actions might pose a threat to academic freedom and institutional autonomy, which are fundamental to American colleges and universities. In contrast, Trump's National Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has articulated that President Trump intends to enhance academic excellence for all students by promoting school choice, involving parents more in their children's education, and supporting effective teachers. Politico has highlighted that the idea of the federal government establishing a new educational institution to compete with existing ones could significantly transform American higher education. Such a move would require approval from the United States Congress and aims at assisting the over 40 million Americans who started college but didn't finish their degree. This initiative shares its target audience with some of Biden administration's student debt relief efforts, though it differs in how it would be funded. There are proposals on the table to cut federal funding for any educational program that includes teaching critical race theory or gender ideology, and to have the Departments of Justice and Education investigate any school district accused of race-based discrimination. Additionally, these proposals call for the removal of what are described as radicals from the Federal Department of Education and to prevent men from competing in women's sports. There's also a push for a new certification process for teachers that emphasizes patriotism, the elimination of teacher tenure from kindergarten through 12th grade in favor of merit pay, reducing the number of school administrators, especially those focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and allowing parents to elect school principals directly. Furthermore, there's a plan to reclaim our once great educational institutions from the radical left by overhauling the college accreditation system. This would involve firing current accreditors deemed to be on the radical left and replacing them with ones who would enforce standards promoting defending the American tradition and Western civilization, safeguarding free speech, cutting down on administrative overhead, especially for roles related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and pushing for more practical, affordable degree options as well as improved job placement services. College entrance and exit exams would be introduced to verify the quality of learning. The Department of Justice would also be tasked with addressing racial discrimination in schools, with particularly egregious cases facing penalties that could include taxing endowments or fining institutions up to the total value of their endowments, with part of these funds possibly being allocated as restitution to those affected by what are described as illegal and unjust policies. A proposal has been made focusing on 10 principles for achieving great schools that lead to great jobs. This plan emphasizes shifting school focuses away from what is viewed as inappropriate racial, sexual, and political material towards equipping students for success in the job market. Here's a breakdown. 1. Restoring parental rights. This principle advocates for giving parents more control over their children's education. This means parents should be informed about the school's academic standards, incidents of violence, materials used for professional development, guest speakers, the school budget, issues of bullying, and health concerns. Also, parents would have the right to opt out of school healthcare services and be notified if a school employee attempts to change a student's name, pronouns, or gender understanding without parental consent. 2. Great principals and teachers. The idea here is to empower local school boards and parents with the authority to hire and fire teachers and principals, aiming to enhance the quality of education. 3. Emphasis on knowledge and skills over critical race theory and gender indoctrination, proposing a curriculum focused on core subjects like reading, writing, math, and science, and removing what is described as the left's equity agenda from classrooms. 4. Fostering love of country, by reintroducing the 1776 Commission to encourage patriotism among students. 5. Freedom to pray. This principle supports the reintroduction of prayer in schools, advocating for spiritual expression. 6. Ensuring schools are safe, secure, and drug-free. It suggests drastic measures, such as immediate expulsion for students who are violent, training and arming teachers, employing armed guards, and investigating the effects of transgender hormone treatments and certain drugs on student behavior. It also includes zero tolerance for illegal drug use. 7. Universal school choice, proposing that parents should have the freedom to choose the most suitable schooling option for their children, whether that's public, private, or religious schools. 8. Project-based learning, encouraging an educational approach that prepares students for the workforce through practical and project-based learning experiences. 9. Internships and work experiences for all students, emphasizing the importance of real-world work experiences, and proposing funding preferences for schools that help students secure internships and jobs. 10. Comprehensive jobs and career counseling, advocating for all schools to provide career counseling services, closing the Department of Education, and devolving education matters to the states. Additionally, the proposal supports homeschooling, allowing parents to use educational savings accounts tax-free and ensuring homeschoolers have access to extracurricular activities. It also suggests taxing large private university endowments accused of anti-Semitism to fund a new American academy. This academy aims to provide a top-notch education for all Americans online at no cost, with the content being strictly apolitical and offering recognized degree credentials. A proposed plan aims at dismantling what is termed as the deep state and reclaiming our democracy from what is perceived as corruption in Washington. This includes plans to dismiss government workers, reintroducing Executive Order 13,957 or Schedule F, to give the President power to remove uncooperative bureaucrats. Other steps include changes to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act courts, releasing classified information about what is described as deep state activities, addressing leaks within the government, ensuring that inspector generals are independent of the departments they inspect, setting up an autonomous system to examine intelligence agencies, relocating government jobs out of Washington, stopping federal employees from moving directly into roles within industries they've regulated, and advocating for a constitutional amendment to limit the term lengths of Congress members. Another proposal is to cut back federal regulations by bringing back Executive Order 13,771 and asking Congress to make it a permanent measure. This would include setting up a regulatory budget to reduce government size each year, publicly posting all government regulations in a single database or else rendering them invalid, and preventing bureaucrats from enforcing actions based solely on informal guidance. The plan suggests bringing independent regulatory bodies like the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Trade Commission under presidential control, creating a simplified regulatory system for freedom cities, and requiring federal employees to pass a new test on constitutional principles. To curb government spending, there's a call to return to a practice known as impoundment, challenging or overturning the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. The plan is to redirect the savings from this into tax reductions, with the goal of curbing inflation and shrinking the deficit. This approach aims to exclude defense, Medicare, or Social Security from cuts, instead bolstering them with some of the savings and using this strategy as a negotiation tool to control spending and to remove what is seen as unwanted elements from the government. Critics, however, including the Washington Post, have voiced concerns that such policies could disrupt the balance of power among the branches of government, potentially leading to a significant constitutional conflict and possibly consolidating more power within the executive branch. The Washington Post also warned against the potential illegality of removing any program at the president's whim, even with changes to the Impoundment Control Act. On the other hand, The Hill has defended impoundment as a common-sense approach essential for the president to guide U.S. foreign policy and ensure national security. Let's make this clearer for everyone listening. First up, there's this idea circulating about ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine in just one day via negotiation. Next, to avoid a third world war and achieve peace, the proposal is to clean house, meaning eliminate all the war enthusiasts and those who prioritize America's interests last, who are currently located in the deep state, the Pentagon, the State Department, and within the national security industrial complex. Furthermore, there's discussion about the necessity for a significant reorganization throughout the defense bureaucracy and intelligence services. The aim here is to oust those identified as deep staters and ensure that policies place an emphasis on America first. In addition, there's a push to reassess the fundamental purpose and mission of NATO. On the military side, the strategy involves channeling an unprecedented level of funding into the military to restore its vigor. This includes requiring Europe to reimburse us for the stockpiles that were dispatched to Ukraine. Tackling the military recruitment challenge is also part of the plan, by reviving the pride, culture, and honor traditions inherent to America's armed forces. Donald Trump has proposed keeping Medicare and Social Security as they are, suggesting cuts to federal spending, reducing aid to other countries, and ending what he describes as the release of illegal immigrants, investments in military programs focused on gender issues, and efforts aimed at combating climate change. He also wants to stop investment strategies that consider environmental, social, and governance factors in retirement accounts through an executive order, and seeks to make this ban permanent with the help of Congress. Trump has voiced concern over the rise of chronic illnesses, particularly among children, citing conditions such as autism, obesity, and allergies. He proposes setting up a special commission, independent from pharmaceutical industry influences, to investigate these increasing health issues. Critics and news outlets like Yahoo News and Axios have noted Trump's avoidance of directly discussing vaccines in his statements, suggesting his messaging could appeal to anti-vaccine groups. They caution his rhetoric might work against public health efforts, drawing parallels with anti-vaccine advocate Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. On drug prices, Trump has proposed an executive order aiming to equalize the prices Americans pay for pharmaceuticals with what is charged abroad, claiming this would lower costs domestically. Despite his mixed track record and previous opposition to some drug price negotiation efforts, he maintains that his administration would take a firm stance against high pharmaceutical prices. Lastly, Trump aims to combat pharmaceutical shortages and reduce dependence on China by bringing back the manufacture of essential drugs to the United States. He plans to use tariffs and import restrictions to encourage domestic production, a move he says will also create American jobs. The Journal of the American Medical Association Health Forum highlights the significant impact the 2024 election could have on healthcare, noting Trump's statements suggest an openness to revisiting drug price negotiations, possibly indicating a path to bipartisan agreement on the issue. There's a proposal to completely ban the use of taxpayer money by President Biden to release undocumented immigrants, additionally introducing criminal penalties for those in the administration who do not comply. Another proposal involves signing an executive order that would clarify to federal agencies that based on the proper interpretation of the law, children born in the future to undocumented immigrants would not automatically receive U.S. citizenship. This move is aimed to halt birth tourism and the subsequent chain migration. For a child to be considered for citizenship under this proposal, at least one parent must be a citizen or legal resident. The justification for this is found in the clear meaning of the 14th Amendment, which says U.S. citizenship is for those born in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction of it, implying that children of undocumented immigrants should not be issued passports, social security numbers, or be eligible for certain taxpayer-funded welfare benefits, and should not have the right to vote. This approach follows a long list of executive actions, proclamations, and presidential memoranda on border security and immigration that were implemented while President Trump was in office. There's also a plan to halt welfare benefits for undocumented immigrants and to end what is seen as an abuse of parole authority by Joe Biden. This includes reinstating the rule that makes undocumented immigrants ineligible for public housing and stopping all work permits for undocumented aliens. There's also a call for Congress to pass a bill that would prevent any future president from being able to award welfare benefits in this manner. CNN indicated that if Congress doesn't provide the necessary funding, Trump might resort to a tactic he used in his first term. This tactic involved obtaining additional funds for a border wall by reallocating funds from the Pentagon. Reflecting on Trump's immigration policies from a healthcare perspective, the Journal of the American Medical Association Health Forum pointed out that these policies significantly reduced immigrants' access to health care and benefits, impacting even those legally in the country. Continuing on this path, Trump has implied in his current campaign that welfare acts as a huge magnet drawing people from across the globe. Imagine launching a competition to create up to 10 brand new cities, referred to as freedom cities, right on undeveloped federal lands. This plan aims to revolutionize how we get around by encouraging the use of vehicles that can take off and land vertically. The idea is to transform overlooked areas into bustling centers of industry and to make life more affordable for families. This includes making it cheaper to build homes and buy cars. There's also a suggestion to support young parents by asking Congress to hand out baby bonuses. The call goes out to governors across all 50 states to step up their game in making cities and public spaces more appealing and to honor true American heroes with significant monuments. There's a proposal to undo the 2021 decision by President Biden, which had reversed a move by President Trump in 2020 regarding the affirmatively furthering fair housing provision. Looking ahead to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, there's an idea to kick off a year-long celebration starting Memorial Day 2025 and running through July 4, 2026. This would be spearheaded by a task force named Salute to America 250, working with state and local governments to light up the nation with festivities. The plan includes setting up the Great American State Fair in the Iowa State Fairgrounds, showcasing pavilions from every state for an entire year. High school athletes would compete in Patriot Games, a series of major sporting events. An executive order would bring to life the National Garden of American Heroes, with artists commissioned to create the first 100 statues. International visitors would be invited to join in, boosting tourism, and American religious communities would be asked to offer prayers for the nation and its people. The call to action says, as we chart a course toward the next 250 years, let us come together and rededicate ourselves as one nation under God. The idea is to break down what is perceived as censorship by the left, particularly when it involves categorizing certain types of information as either misinformation or disinformation. This encompasses topics such as the 2020 elections, COVID, and allegations of criminal activities involving the Biden family. The strategy to address this includes several steps. First, it would halt all federal agencies from categorizing information in this manner. Secondly, any federal officials who have previously participated in this practice would be dismissed from their positions and would lose their right to vote. There would also be an effort to initiate investigations and legal actions against anyone involved in these censorship activities. Lastly, universities that have engaged in this type of categorization would be stripped of federal financial support. These measures are targeted at challenging and ultimately altering the current methods of dealing with what is viewed as misinformation or disinformation on various platforms and by different entities. Let's discuss proposals aimed at enhancing law enforcement and justice in our society. These include increasing investment in police personnel and providing them with more protections, implementing stop and frisk practices more rigorously, and enforcing existing gun laws more strictly. The proposal also discusses addressing open drug use and working closely with immigration and customs enforcement to identify and deport individuals involved in criminal activities. There's a plan to have the Department of Justice investigate offices of some prosecutors, specifically in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. These investigations aim to check if there's any racial bias in law enforcement by these offices, especially targeting what have been described as radical left prosecutors. Moreover, it seeks to offer those harmed by such policies a chance to sue local officials for their suffering. There's a strong stance on dismantling criminal organizations and advocating for the death penalty for drug dealers and human traffickers. The proposal includes deploying the National Guard in cities where law and order are particularly threatened and revising federal guidelines concerning the discipline of minors. It emphasizes protecting self-defense rights, suggesting nationwide reciprocity for concealed carry permits and ensuring border security. The war on drug cartels is another critical aspect, drawing parallels to the fight against the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, with plans for a full naval embargo and targeted military actions against cartels. This includes leveraging military special forces, cyber warfare, and cutting off the cartels' financial networks. The proposal encourages cooperation with neighboring countries or exposing corrupt practices within these governments. Additionally, there's a call for the appointment of 100 United States attorneys, described as being very different from those supported by Soros, and a complete overhaul of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This includes investigating certain district attorneys for potential violations of federal civil rights laws and examining federal authorities' arrest tactics of conservatives and Christians. The proposal also mentions addressing the radicalization in law schools and the exclusion of conservative lawyers from major law firms. Lastly, a suggestion to watch the movie Sound of Freedom has been included, emphasizing the seriousness of child and human trafficking and advocating for legislation that would impose the death penalty on individuals involved in such crimes. The discussion revolves around two main proposals with significant implications for national security and international relations. First, there is a suggestion to develop a sophisticated missile defense system, similar to Israel's Iron Dome. This initiative is championed by Trump, who has highlighted its potential to create jobs during his rallies. Forbes has weighed in, describing this idea as having limited overall utility, noting that Israel's system involves at least 10 Iron Dome units to protect against short-range threats. They suggest that covering the United States adequately would require hundreds of these systems, which would not be effective against long-distance ballistic missiles, but could defend military bases, especially those abroad, and vital infrastructure. Meanwhile, Haaretz has labeled the concept a fantasy, pointing out not only the technical challenges but also the historical investment of hundreds of billions of dollars by the U.S. in missile defense without achieving the desired outcome. They also note that such a project would need approval from Congress, which has not been forthcoming for similar initiatives in the past. Secondly, there is a proposition to reinvigorate the Department of Justice's initiative targeting Chinese espionage within the U.S., a move that was halted by the Biden administration following appeals from the academic community, including faculty at the University of Pennsylvania. The China Initiative, launched in November 2018, aimed to curb Chinese economic espionage but faced criticism for disproportionately targeting individuals of Chinese descent, leading to claims of racial profiling without substantial evidence of wrongdoing. This program saw 28 prosecutions, but notably, none of the 4 professors of Chinese descent were convicted of espionage or theft. Criticism from the academic sector, exemplified by a joint letter from over 1,600 scholars across more than 200 universities, highlighted concerns over investigations initiated without substantial evidence. In February 2022, Matthew G. Olson, Assistant Attorney General for National Security, announced that the initiative was being reframed to address concerns of bias and would now focus on a broader spectrum of international threats beyond China. These proposals reflect complex challenges at the intersection of national security, international relations, and civil rights, demonstrating the nuanced debate required to navigate such issues. There is a proposal to cancel President Biden's Executive Order 13,985, with the aim to dismantle what is seen as harmful and discriminatory equity programs, which some believe undermine American institutions. Part of this plan includes asking the Department of Justice to look into any illegal bias and civil rights violations by the current administration. Additionally, it would mean ending all jobs, departments, and efforts related to these equity policies, reviewing and possibly reversing their effects, and suggesting that Congress creates a compensation fund for those negatively impacted by such policies. On the topic of changes potentially coming with a second term under Trump, Axios highlighted that Trump's allies are hoping to reinterpret laws from the civil rights era to address what they call anti-white racism, instead of focusing on discrimination against minorities. Stephen Chung, speaking for the Trump campaign, was quoted saying that everything connected to Biden's un-American policy would be immediately done away with. Regarding homelessness, there is a plan to use the funds currently allocated to Ukraine and reduce mass unskilled immigration to clear the streets of homeless people. This includes banning urban camping, with an option for law violators to enter rehabilitation programs. There is also a plan to create tent cities for the homeless to offer them support to either return to normal life or receive medical care, aiming at their eventual reintegration into society. To tackle the drug crisis, a full naval embargo against drug cartels and utilizing military force to destroy their operations are being considered. This effort would ask for cooperation from neighboring countries to break apart trafficking networks, push for the death penalty for drug dealers and traffickers, and aim to take down local gangs involved in drug distribution. It proposes making fentanyl a permanently controlled substance, threatening China with severe consequences if it doesn't act against the export of fentanyl precursors, and focusing on strengthening work, faith, and family as pillars to help those with addiction, including proposing solutions like job protection for those seeking treatment, support for faith-based recovery programs, and public-private job training initiatives for recovered addicts. Lastly, there is a proposition to sign an executive order to stop Biden's funding for the accommodation and transportation of immigrants, which has reportedly cost nearly $1 billion for luxury hotel stays, and redirect a significant portion of those funds to help homeless American veterans, with the goal of completely eliminating homelessness among veterans by the end of the next term. A proposal has been made to completely stop all types of gender-affirming care. This would mean instructing every federal agency to terminate programs that support the concept of changing one's sex or gender identity, regardless of age. It also entails eliminating federal funding for these programs and declaring that hospitals or healthcare providers involved in such care will not adhere to federal health and safety standards for programs like Medicaid and Medicare, effectively disqualifying them. Additionally, there is a suggestion to create legal pathways for suing doctors who perform gender-affirming surgeries and to direct the Department of Justice to investigate pharmaceutical companies and hospitals. The focus would be on determining whether they concealed the serious long-term side effects of gender-transitioning treatments to profit from vulnerable patients, and if they illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers. The Department of Education would be involved as well, advising states and school districts that implying a child could be transgender might result in civil rights violation cases for sex discrimination, in addition to a loss of federal funds. There is also a proposal for a law that would officially recognize only male and female genders determined at birth. The Advocate, a news source, has described these policies as devastating for LGBTQ+ Americans and other marginalized communities. They highlighted the extensive impact these policies could have, affecting areas like education, healthcare, and the military, and posing significant threats to the LGBTQ+ community. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.